Welcome to the Visually Hidden Selects podcast, where we discuss an independent approach to the art of cinema and explore the subtext of various featured films. My name is Peter O'Brien, and I am an independent filmmaker, author, and musician.
My name is David Bendler. I'm a film and stage actor and a pop culture enthusiast.
I'm Anne Milleville, a French screenwriter and producer.
This week's VHS selection was True Romance from 1993, directed by Tony Scott, starring Christian Slater, Patricia Arquette, and just it's like the murderer's row of supporting cast. It really is pretty fantastic. We're going to dig deep into that. And I think one of the most notable things about this film is that it was written by Quentin Tarantino. But if you have not seen True Romance, I encourage you to pause the podcast, head over to the Visually Hidden YouTube channel and subscribe so you don't miss any future recommendations. Check out True Romance and then come on back to the podcast because we will be discussing it at length, in depth, and full of spoilers. Here we go. So this is another one that I just found at far too young an age by, I guess, today's standards. I mean, this movie came out in 1993, and I probably saw it in 1993. I remember my brother came home. He was living in Chicago at the time, and he had a VHS copy of it. And he and my dad watched it, and I was like intrigued. I was like, oh, you know, like when the adults are in the room watching the movie, you're not supposed to. You're always curious about it.
Yeah, indeed.
This was that movie because they were talking about it like constantly afterwards. And I didn't see it at that time, but shortly after that, it came on pay-per-view. From that point on, it was just like off to the races. And I just like worshipped this movie because it was the coolest fucking thing I had ever seen until I saw Pulp Fiction later in 1994 in the theater when I was like 11. It might have been the week before I turned 11. I saw Pulp Fiction when it first came out, but True Romance, Pulp Fiction, that was the time. It was the time of Tarantino. And really, for me, he doesn't get much better than those two. I know I'm probably going to get crucified and people are going to come after me with pitchforks and chase me up to the windmill, but I don't care. This, for me, True Romance is probably his best film, and it's like 1A and 1B with Pulp Fiction. I do really like Reservoir Dogs. I know Steve is already getting ready to pounce, and I'm going to just let you know, like that one passes. That one's in the club, but I remember getting the unrated director's cut on video and just watching it after school throughout junior high and just trying to share it with people. I was always trying to share these movies with people like True Romance and Clerks, and everybody would look at me like I was out of my fucking mind. Like I would tell people about Clerks and they're like, what's it about? It's like, oh, it's about a day in the life of Clerks. It's like, that doesn't sound funny. It's like, well, maybe you should watch the movie before you judge it. In 7th grade.
So this is your life's work, in other words. This is your purpose.
Yeah, to just bring the knowledge to the people, you know, try to educate, lift them up, you know, maybe get them out of that rut, you know, that they've been wallowing in, and then just, you know, better living through cinema is what I'm all about. So True Romance is right up there for me, and you know, it just had its 30th anniversary last September. I've watched it a few times recently in preparation for this podcast and the VHS video, and it hasn't really depreciated much in 30 years, which I think is a real testament to not just the story, but also the filmmaking and all of the ingredients that go into it, the music, the cast. We're going to dig right into it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I distinctly remember I had a very close friend who, looking back on it, never really shared any of my interests except girls. You know, like he wasn't into baseball, he wasn't into wrestling, really wasn't into movies. And I remember we went to the video store one day and just looking around trying to find something to watch, and we came across the box of True Romance, and I'm like, hey, that's the dude from Cuffs. I want to see this movie. Let's get this one. And we did, and we put it on, and my friend kind of shit all over the movie. Like, we didn't even finish it. Like, he just kept talking so much, and it was really getting on my fucking nerves. And I was like, I have to watch this on my own later on to really appreciate it, because he shut it off like maybe 20 minutes in. I mean, he really didn't give it a fair shake at all. Again, I was a kid who grew up on mainly comedies and horror movies, so this realistic depiction of violence was new to me. It was a little off-putting, but there was something about the movie that really drew me in. I'm like, I need to see this movie again on my own. And this has been not just one of my favorite Tarantino movies, but one of my favorite fucking movies, period. End of story. Absolutely adore this movie.
Okay, I feel bad because I'm not as enthusiastic as you are on that movie. The first time I watched it with care, it was last year. It's true that every time you watch it, you appreciate it better. I feel that way. So maybe in 10 years, I will be as enthusiastic as you are. But I really do love Quentin Tarantino. And that's the thing, I'm a bit disappointed. It's a good movie, but when you know it's a Tarantino writing, you're a bit disappointed. That's my feeling about it. I remember that we talked about this movie a year ago, Pete, and before talking about it with you, I wrote some notes. And I wrote that time, don't give your good shit to others, do it yourself, or they might screw it up. It's a good sum up about what I feel about this movie.
See, I feel like if Quentin Tarantino had done this movie, he may have screwed it up, but I can't say that for certain because it would have been a totally different movie. I know that his original script had the non-linear presentation as most of his films did. So like it started out kind of in the middle and then it came back around and it jumped back and forth between like Detroit and LA and telling the story and the incident with Drexel and going to see Dick Ritchie, and all this was like mixed up in the non-linear Tarantino signature storytelling of the time. He also had Clarence in Alabama dying at the end. So I feel like it would have been a totally different film. And even the casting that he would have selected would have gave it a different tone. And as I said in the VHS, I am not a Tony Scott fan, but this movie is just fucking amazing. And all of his signature details as a filmmaker work in this particular story and this particular presentation. And I have to attribute it to the script. You know, that's the defining element of this particular film is the script and all of these characters and the richness of the story.
Yeah, funnily, I don't ever consider True Romance to be a Quentin Tarantino movie because he
No.
didn't direct it. So I never put it in against a Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs. And I think it's to call it a Quentin movie, it kind of shortchanges Tony Scott. And I think this is Tony Scott's, this is his milestone. This is his.
Absolutely.
He left his fucking mark with this one. You know, if you did one movie, you could be satisfied that that was the one. I mean, I remember working at Barnes & Noble like 20 odd years ago, and on my lunch break, I would just take a book off the shelf and read. I picked up the script for True Romance and I read it. You know, in the cafe in Barnes & Noble, I fucking find out Clarence dies. Like, what the fuck? Had no idea. I was like, oh my, I don't like this at all. Like, it blew my mind because I had been living with the version that we have for so long, so much of my life.
Yeah.
And then I think that if Quentin did direct the movie, I agree, it would be a completely different film. However, I think I would like it. I don't think that I would love it the way that I love this film.
I've watched the movie a number of times, and I've watched the DVD with the audio commentary by Tony Scott, by Quentin Tarantino. And really, if you want to learn a lot about this movie, you should watch Quentin Tarantino's. It's like the most humble and human you will ever hear that man be with a microphone in front of him, honestly. But it was really kind of fascinating. And he was saying, like, you know, when it got to the end of the movie and they reached out to him, they said, listen, Tony Scott said to him, the movie that you wrote is the right ending, but the movie that I shot, I want to see these characters make it. Mm-hmm. You know, they deserve to make it after everything they've gone through. The characters that I directed deserve to make it. And I think that's a really interesting point. And Quentin Tarantino does agree with that outlook from Tony Scott. And he hasn't disowned this film the way he did Natural Born Killers, but that's a whole other podcast journey. I think it's kind of fascinating that, yeah, like the words on the page are the same, but it's the direction that the director takes it that distinguishes this particular film.
Absolutely. It's not unlike the Dexter thing, you know, where Jeff Lindsay, like my Dexter lives in the books and I watch the show and I enjoy the show and I'm intrigued and I'm invested like everyone else is, but I understand that it's not my Dexter. It's just a different take on the situation. There's a certain maturity that someone has to have to allow someone to do something like that, because I'm a control freak when it comes to something that I've created.
Quentin did get paid and he signed the contract, so they were in the right to do whatever. It was really just a courtesy call, but nevertheless, you know, it was good of Tony Scott to reach out that
and I
way
think it was the right choice. And at the end of the day, it really is the right choice. And I'll tell you one of the reasons I think why it's the right choice. And this kind of just dawned on me last night, actually, and I've seen this movie a million times. one of the first moments that we really see Alabama start to fall in love with Clarence. Not to not see him as a client or as a job, but to fall in love with him was in Heroes for Sale. They're reading the comic books, and he's explaining the Nick Fury situation. And at the end of the movie, he ends up with an eye patch. He basically ends up like Nick Fury. I thought it's a beautiful kind of a bookend, and then to see him playing with a little kid, like that something good came out of all that disgusting misery and craziness in Detroit. And it is a fairy tale, and Quentin was asked once, like, why don't you ever like make a romantic movie? He's like, I fucking did. It's called True Romance. Like, look it up. Like, and it's the truth. It's this is a romance. Unconventional.
A big thing that contributes to that outcome and that outlook is actually Hans Zimmer's score. That light marimba driven theme that plays in this very, very dark themed setting. And so that there's like this like beautiful little pulse driving this story. And as I said in the VHS, like it's Alabama's vision. It's sort of told through her eyes and through her experience, through her romanticized experience with Clarence and how she found true romance. And so to have it go down that dark road of like murder suicide, it wasn't the right note to end the movie on.
Yeah, well played, Tony Scott. That was quite the call.
But now, Anne, you said don't give your work to other people to mess it up. So what's the problem between the writing and the translation to film that you saw and experienced?
On this movie, I love the script. I love the story. I love how characters are complex, and maybe it's a violent movie, but it's a meaningful violence. It shows a lot about the characters and everything. So you feel that there is Tarantino behind it. But for me, it's just a movie, shot by shot, and there is no fantasy in the direction. I feel that way. It's not an adventure. I don't feel you have the adventure of the characters, but you don't feel that the director wants to bring you with him on something crazy. It's a bit boring, I think, the way it's shot. Too much structure. I wanted something really off the wall sometimes, and it's not. And in particular, there is a scene that I'm really disappointed about. It's the one with Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper. When Walken is about to shot him, if you had a close-up on him, you would still have the impression that maybe he's not going to shoot him, because the way the actors is acting, it's on the edge. You don't know. He's always, sometimes he's hilarious, sometimes he's irritated. So you can think that maybe he's not going to shoot him. But because you have a wide shot, you know what's going to happen. And this is because of the direction. You know what I'm saying? I was really disappointed the first time I watched the movie because of that, because it could be so great to have just a close-up and you don't know really what's going on, but you see that he has the gun behind him, so you understand he's going to shoot him.
I think Dennis Hopper knows no matter what, he's not leaving that room.
Yeah, he it was a foregone conclusion. Like the second he asked for the cigarette and started to tell the story about the Sicilians, he knew he was signing his own death warrant. And I think, you can read that on his face. And so now you're just kind of like waiting for it. It's like that like Hitchcock suspense. Like, the bomb is under the table. When's it gonna blow?
Yeah. That's the only scene in the movie where we kind of live in just that scene without Clarence and Alabama in some way, shape, or form. And it takes its time, and rightfully so. I mean, here's a dad, gonna die on the hill for his kid. He forgot the fucking addresses on the refrigerator, but he takes that stand.
I love the punctuation that Dennis Hopper puts onto the scene where it's like, now, if that's a fact,
right? Am
I lying? That is brilliant writing because it sets it up and then it takes its time to get there and you watch the fuse burn. I think that scene is about 11 minutes and it's just this little side jaunt away from Clarence in Alabama to like kind of like cleanse the palate. Like we are leaving Detroit with a bang and now the chase is on.
And it legitimizes the threat that's coming for Clarence.
And with Tarantino, you have a dialogue flow with many words, and sometimes you feel drawn with the words. You have so many, but it's kind of a music with him. I mean, I don't know. I love Tarantino, so maybe I'm not objective, but
the one problem that I do have with the film is actually in the writing and in the dialogue.
Whoa.
And this is another thing that people, yeah, here it comes. Yeah. And sharpening her pitchfork and lighting her torch. Here she comes, coming to get me. But for it being his first script, you can see the lack of discipline, but you can also see the lack of diversification within the characters' voices. And I'm going to give you an example right now. In Detroit, when Clarence and Alabama are up on the billboard, and they're talking about the night before, and Clarence says, I knew there must have been something rotten in Denmark because you couldn't have liked me that much. And then fast forward to Los Angeles, and Chris Penn says, there's something rotten in Denmark because blah, 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 blah. It's like that repetition of those words. And it happens again, I think also with the cops. And it's just that repetition of those phrases where it's like, okay, that's him too much in his own head.
Yeah.
He's applying it. And even Gary Oldman says something. Drexel says, we got everything from a diddle-I-do to a damned if I know. And then you hear that again in Kill Bill.
Yeah.
Years later, Uma Thurman utters that same exact phrase. And like, you can chalk it up to...
It's a Tarantinoism.
Yeah, it's a Tarantinoism. But at the same time, we talked about The Breakfast Club a little bit ago and the writing in that. And John Hughes, he's a fucking writer. And it comes across in his scripts and in his dialogue. And he doesn't have a lot of those repetitions or isms.
Yeah.
That's a distinction between somebody starting out and somebody who's seasoned.
That's something that I've always noticed. But when it comes to Quentin Tarantino, I give him a pass. I never mind, because I feel like those guys are always they're in that Tarantino world. So they all kind of talk like that.
Right, but there's dialogue and then there's character. And so when a lot of the characters have the same voice, it kind of zaps me out as a writer who works on characters and strives to give each character their own voice. When they all have the same voice, it just seems a little bit lazy to me. And you can see it in Kevin Smith films as well. He has a lot of the characters just talking the same way, and they're talking the way Kevin Smith or Jason Mewes talks. He just adopts that as his writing style. But then you look at the Coen brothers, and they jump around from region to region, and they have different dialects and different accents and different time periods, and their dialogue also just sings and flows and distinguishes the actors delivering it to make the character. And I think that's something that I feel Tarantino lacks. And I'm not saying that he doesn't write good dialogue or good stories or good movies, but I'm saying when it comes to his characters, they're a little one-dimensional.
I can see that point.
And now a word from our sponsor.
This podcast is brought to you by Visually Hidden Selects. If you're looking for a spoiler-free recommendation of a classic film with professional analysis and insight, check out Visually Hidden Selects, exclusively on the Visually Hidden YouTube channel.
One of the flaw for me in Tarantino's movies, sometimes you have characters that you don't really need for the story. For example, I'm sure you won't agree with me on that, but having Elvis in the movie was not necessary, or even Dick, the friend, is not necessary. He could have dealt with Elliot directly, and he could have gone to Hollywood looking for someone in the business, and he found Elliot, and it would have been the same. I mean, we don't really need this character. Even if I love the actor, is nothing against the actor.
Well, I think with regard to Elvis, I mean, and he's credited, I believe, as the mentor in the credits, because they couldn't get the rights to Elvis, and I don't know if you noticed, but there are no Elvis songs in the movie. It's really Clarence's manifestation of his subconscious.
But what would Elvis do?
His imaginary friend. And that's why the movie starts with his kind of pledge of allegiance to Elvis. And that's his aspiration, that's his goal, living fast, dying young, leaving a good looking corpse. And he was everything that was cool. It
always reminded me of Woody Allen in Play It Again, Sam, when he's talking to Humphrey Bogart, where Bogart is like his internal guy behind him, guiding him through the situation. But man, I love Val Kilmer in this.
I love that we never see
Uh,
him. He has such high billing and you never see him. You just hear him and like, I mean, you see him, but you don't see his face. You see it on like the box and they put him in the trailer. But in the movie, if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss it. And I think that's brilliant. And that's a brilliant credit to Val Kilmer as an actor, where it's like, yeah, I don't need to be face on the screen. I need to be a part of this movie. I need to be a part of this story. I need to be a part of this happening.
he would
you
call
know?
Tony Scott up in like 3 o'clock in the morning and sing Elvis songs to him.
But I think it's cool to have Elvis in the story. It's not what I'm saying. It's the personification I don't like. When someone is dead, let him rest in peace. I mean, it's cool in a way because Elvis is iconic, but I don't really like
Well,
when you
stay away from
use.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood then, because the Bruce Lee situation is going to piss you off.
Yeah,
Well,
true.
let's not go there. I like Dick Ritchie as a character, and I feel like he does have a function because I think it would have been way harder for Clarence to make that connection in Hollywood, in Los Angeles, if he didn't have a friend that could put him in touch with Elliot. You can't go around advertising that you have a suitcase full of cocaine. Like, if the cops don't get you, the criminals will, So he needed a friend that he could trust, on the inside, sort of.
It could have been friend with Elliot.
But then that's a little too convenient, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Maybe.
That's that convenient writing that also, I feel like it gave it good opportunities, and it allowed things to heighten, because then, like, all right, if this is his good friend, is Elliot really going to wear a wire?
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Like, I don't think Dick Ritchie would do that. I think Dick Ritchie would go down for Clarence.
But you don't feel like he has no use in many scenes?
I feel like Dick Ritchie kind of represents the type of person that Clarence was. Clarence is different now. He was the kid in the comic book shop reading those comics of all these grand adventures about Nick Fury doing this thing for the woman he loves, diving into the sea, finding the ring, all that kind of stuff. He now gets to be the hero.
Great point.
He's sort of a package deal, and he brings us Floyd. We wouldn't have Floyd if we didn't have Dick.
That's true.
It could have been such a nothing part, but he's so fucking good at the littlest things. My favorite moment is when he's talking to Blue's guys.
You want to smoke a bowl? Oh, okay.
So you're gonna go down the road, like that's the high comedy moment right there. Just the cocking of the shotgun. He's like, enough said.
And when he says the direction is so hilarious.
Yeah. It's such a delight, and like it's really funny too, because this was 1993, filmed in 1992. This was before Seven. This was before Interview with the Vampire and Legends of the Fall. Here he is, just smoking a bowl
in the bear honey container, like we all had when we were kids.
Yeah,
I'll kill you, man. Like just
fucking condescending me, man. I'll fucking kill you. And some cleaning products.
Not for cleaning, in my opinion.
Which he's probably going to inhale. Let's face the facts. He's probably going to inhale them.
Yeah, it's just brilliant. You got to wonder, like, how much of that is Brad Pitt, how much of that is Tony Scott, and how much of that is what was on the page, And it just, again, it all comes together through the blocking, through the editing. The fact that, like, oh yeah, like let's get more Floyd in here. Let's hold on him for a few more seconds or a few more frames.
Absolutely.
And then, fucking James Gandolfini just kind of strutting through this movie.
Listen.
He's in Detroit in the trailer, and then he goes and hangs out with Floyd, and then he has a fucking brutal confrontation with Alabama where she gives him what for.
Well,
like, oh my God, you want to talk, like, that might be the second best scene in the movie after Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper is fucking Alabama versus Virgil.
Yeah, it's what a woman can do for love, It's a fantastic scene. I love it so much because you have everything of Alabama in it. You see at the beginning she's like a falsely naive, and suddenly you understand that she has an unfalling love for Clarence. So she's giving 100% she has to protect him. and she's so brave in it.
And it's the other side of the Clarence Drexel coin.
Yeah.
Clarence goes to Drexel to protect Alabama and to, kind of rescue her, and she's protecting Clarence now from the mafia.
Yeah, I think it's really pivotal for Alabama, mostly because you take that scene out of the film, right? Pretend it doesn't happen. She's just a damsel in distress. That scene, she's carrying her weight, and like he said, we're in this together. And then that's her stepping up and doing what she had to do to keep the team going downfield.
It leads to a very beautiful scene of them, him caring for her at the airport there when he's like, cleaning her wounds, and they just kind of, you learn a little bit more about Clarence's backstory about living by the airport and wishing he could go and do these things. So it's adding to his motivation.
Yeah. It really is such a well-written, well-thought-out, well-paced script, as we said before. But again, it's so many actors in this movie that have such an incredible fucking range. It blows my mind. You think about Bronson Pinchot, right? At this point in time, he's like finishing up or right at the tail end of Perfect Strangers, playing Balky, and then he's Surge in the Beverly Hills Cop movies, and then does something like this, which no one saw this coming, right? He gets pulled over. Like he's getting roadhead. He's got cocaine all over him. Where's the dance of joy? Like what happened to that? Like such a departure of him looking for cousin Larry.
Even Saul Rubinek, as Lee Donowitz is fantastic. I mean, I know he's just doing like a impersonation of a Joel Silver, who's a very famous movie producer. I don't think Joel Silver really appreciated this movie as much as we do, but nevertheless, I think he's, I love when he's just driving down and he's like, "Don't give me the finger, I'll fucking have you killed." Like,
why are you calling me on Sunday, Elliot? I don't talk to you on Sunday.
Body Bags 2 got more taste in my penis. Just all those little like comments that you would expect to hear from
a coked out producer,
from a cynical, jaded movie producer. And he just plays it to perfection.
Yeah, really. There's no bad turn in this film. I mean, every actor delivers.
It's just a bit frustrating that Samuel L. Jackson is just 5 minutes on screen.
He wasn't Samuel Jackson yet. What is it, like a year later, right? It's Pulp Fiction time. Yeah. So it's like he's right there. In Goodfellas in 1990, he had a little bit of a little something there. And then all of a sudden he gets Pulp Fiction, and then The Long Kiss Goodnight and Die Hard. And then he's like, now he's everywhere, and I love that guy. I'll watch that guy do anything.
Gary Oldman, I don't think enough can be said about what he's doing in this movie.
That guy's a titan. Yeah.
I've seen interviews with him dressed up as Drexel, like talking about the character, like that they filmed on set, and he's with his British accent, explaining his approach to the character. He's like, yeah, I got the script and I was shooting something else and I heard these guys talking out on the street. And so I went, hey, excuse me, would you mind coming in here and reading these for me? And he's like, well, I wouldn't say it this way. I would say it this way. It's like, okay, good. Just say it into the recorder. And he just plucked this guy off the street and adopted his voice for the basis of his character. And then just even what he has going on physically with the dreadlocks and the miscolored eyes and the scar on his face. It's
the grills in his teeth.
Like, oh my God.
For my money, Gary Oldman is the king of the chameleons in the acting world.
Honestly, I would not have been surprised if he had gotten nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Drexel in his two little scenes. If fucking Anthony Hopkins can win for like 10 minutes as Hannibal Lecter, absolutely. Gary Oldman, because again, it's 30 years later and we're still talking about that fucking performance.
Absolutely.
And how good it is and how novel it is and how fresh it is, how believable.
When I was younger, he scared the shit out of me. Like, I couldn't believe that Clarence would even walk into that room, let alone pull a pistol on him. And like that, he's scary. I can't say enough good things about Gary Oldman, man.
There's another character I'm not fully convinced with. And oh my God, you're going to hate me for that.
Oh boy.
Let's go.
It's Clarence.
It's Clarence?
He's not realistic, this guy. I mean,
we just lost cabin pressure.
Yeah. I'm in a free fall right now. Hold on.
Yeah.
What's going on?
I don't know. I can't relate to this.
We don't need the main character. We don't need the catalyst for the story.
We just need Brad Pitt.
We don't need no stinking
Don't you get it? No,
Yeah, we just gotta get right to Brad Pitt. We just gotta get Alabama in the room with Brad Pitt, and there's the movie.
That's it.
exactly. No, but no.
Holy shit.
No, we need Clarence for sure. But it just sometimes I wasn't fully convinced about this character. And when you think about it, as I said, he never hold a gun before, and he's going like that. Okay, I understand that he's completely in love with Alabama and he wants to do that for her, and it's a proof that he's a brave guy. But I don't know. I think he's too at ease with the fight and the gun for someone who never did that before. So maybe that's the braveness in him that makes him do that. I can understand, but
Well, we don't know a whole lot about Clarence's history, and he does already have the gun, and he's been living his entire life in Detroit
That's true.
oh, okay.
in the 80s.
He's also
So,
been
I think,
he's also been living vicariously through entertainment, right? The Sonny Chiba trilogy he goes to watch, the comic books that he's reading. So he's already kind of built up this maybe persona or alter ego or person he'd like to be. His dad was a cop, so he
yeah.
had that influence in his life. So maybe his dad taught him how to shoot, how to handle a gun. So he had a superhero kind of figure in his dad growing up. Like, this is a guy who enforces the law. He's my dad's a badass.
Well, and in his conversation with his dad, he reveals that, he was very independent, like his dad was always drunk. And so he was the one who was taking initiative and getting things done and kind of running the show for the family after his mom died.
Okay, I was sure you would be against me on that, but that's okay. I understand your point. And even the couple, I feel that it's more gross than romantic in a way. But I really do love Alabama, so there is a positive point in my in my argumentation. But yeah, I don't know. It's they fall in love quite too easily. I understand Alabama's point of view, maybe because I'm a woman, but him, it's like, okay, for once in my life, a woman is interested in me and she likes kung fu. So okay, I love her. Let's get married. I don't know. For me, it's not a true romance.
Ouch.
I think every guy who ever saw this movie instantly fell in love with Patricia Arquette.
Oh, and I understand that.
Because and this is Quentin Tarantino's writing. This is his character. This is his creation. This is probably what he would have loved to have had in his life when he was a video store geek instead of a comic book
I was going to
geek.
say that earlier.
It's that wish fulfillment fantasy that he's concocting. So that makes it kind of the part of the fairy tale. Love conquers all. Like, it's a universal theme plucked out of its conventional setting and dropped into this ultra violent, hyper realistic, drug fueled setting.
Yeah, but I still feel that if she was not pretty, he probably wouldn't have been with her. While the opposite for her, I'm sure she doesn't care about how he looks, because despite the falseness of the situation, she's touched by him. You can see that. I don't know. I don't really like their couple. The only good moment for me is, and it's quite funny actually, when Clarence comes back after he killed Gary Oldman. He's really on stress and he's yelling at her because he just said that he killed Gary Oldman, and she's so emotional. She wants to say, "Oh, it's so romantic," but he doesn't let her say that, and at the end she kisses him, saying, "Oh, it's so romantic," and it says everything about Alabama. I think the scene, and it's the only moment for me that I love that couple. But otherwise, as I said, for me it's quite gross actually. Say, I don't know. It's not a romance.
But I think
It's more sexual than love for me. But yeah, anyway.
I remember like the first time I saw that and he's yelling. I'm like, hey, dude, don't yell at her, But then like now as I'm older, it's like just killed it, as far as we know, the first person he's ever murdered. He just killed two people, and then went and got burgers, like, so his fucking adrenaline's up. So I guess he thought she was going to give him like the business of like, you shouldn't have done that. What are you thinking? Like, so he's already on the defense about it. And then she's like, that's the fucking sweetest gesture anyone's ever done for me in my life. They like to put themselves at risk to free me from this prison that I'm living in. I don't know. I guess I'm just a big softy and a romantic at heart.
Yeah. No, but it's a cute scene, that's for sure.
Yeah, when you're not dreaming about strangling Nurse Ratched.
Well, she had it coming. All right, so that's a fucking different situation.
I don't know, Anne. I don't know. A lot of stuff you said has really just kind of like rattled my mind right now.
You broke the puzzler.
I personally feel like Christian Slater and Patricia Arquette are phenomenal in this film, and I don't question their relationship. I don't question their chemistry as actors and performers and characters for 1 second in this film.
The end, I don't like the end really. And I was interested when you said that Tarantino's wanted to do to make Alabama and Clarence dead at the end. That would have been perfect. But just a suggestion: just having Clarence dead during the slaughter, and Alabama. You see Alabama years later, and she's having a kid, like she calls him Clarence Junior Cancun or something like that. It would have been enough, because the happy ending at the end is it's terrible, really.
And I thought France was the fucking land of romance.
Yeah, of romance, but not happy ending.
Holy
it's really American
shit.
happy ending. For us, when everybody dies at the end, it's a good romance. Can be romantic. Death is romantic.
Okay.
See, I agree, and
Yeah.
I don't like the ending because the movie's over. That's why I don't like the end. I want to enjoy this adventure.
He wants Clarence and Alabama go to Cancun.
Yeah. You know the kind of fucking trouble they can get in there? Oh, man.
Well, that will about do it for us here today at the Visually Hidden Selects podcast. We will be discussing a completely different film next time, so be sure to head over to the YouTube channel and subscribe so you don't miss any future recommendations. You can catch Stephen Bendler on Instagram over at Steve's Pop Culture Corner, and I'm sure he's going to post some awesome true romance memorabilia that he owns and displays. Anne and I, of course, are also over on Instagram as well as Letterboxd, so you can follow us over there and see what we think, and you can find out all of Anne's gripes and grievances with true romance on her soon-to-be-published review. And until next time, it's better to have a gun and not need it than to need it and not have it.